Hello and welcome to the Roost News, the place for all things volunteer. I am Lillian Lee, co-lead for the Roost News, and today with me is Mrs. Deborah Turner, a renowned volunteer with AARP. I am so excited. Welcome, Deborah.
Well, thank you, Lillian, for those kind words.
Yes. Well, today we're going to talk about a conference that Deborah was a presenter. It was titled Mid-America Institute on Aging and Wellness Conference. Now that's a long title, so we'll just say MAIA, and you know what we're referring to, the Mid-America Institute on Aging and Wellness. Your topic, Deborah, was AARP and the benefits of volunteering. But before we get to your topic, let's find out a little bit more about Deborah and how she has been an exemplary or continues to be an exemplary volunteer for AARP. Deborah, tell us a little bit about you.
Sure. And I started volunteering with AARP about 14 years ago, 2 days after I retired from my long-term finance career. And it was something that I said, well, I'm not exactly sure what I'm going to do going forward, but I knew that I needed to do something and at some place where I felt I could be useful. And I had always been in accounting and finance. That had been my thing, banking, 40 years. And I said, well, let me try something totally different. And through Create the Good, I found an opportunity to work in Kentucky, which is my hometown, helping people 50 plus write their resumes and make them more acceptable in a new world. And I said, well, I've never done anything like that. So let me see if that's something I could do. And lo and behold, that was AARP trying a pilot program at the time in Kentucky. And I started there, taking some training, haven't ever done that, and started then moving into the tech side of it. How can I help other people, creating orientation programs? And before you know it, it's been 14 years. And I'm doing national as well as Kentucky things all the time.
Wonderful, wonderful. And I know that I have participated in your exchange program. I think it was on Wednesdays, maybe Tuesdays. Excellent program, Tuesdays. Yes, excellent program. So let's get back to this MAIA conference. Now your topic, aging and the benefits of volunteering, actually, did you come up with that title, or did they present a title to you and you decide, okay, this is something of interest? How did that particular title come about?
I ended up being one of two presenters with AARP volunteer facilitation and training team, backgrounds and connections. One was clear. It was a topic on disrupt aging, and that presentation is out there. But my particular topic apparently was something that had been agreed to between AARP Indiana and the MAIA conference. So this was not a topic that I chose, but it was a topic I came to love.
Good.
AARP and the benefits of volunteering. It wasn't just volunteering at AARP that I thought was important. I thought it was this was a good time to explain to other people what the benefits of volunteering are. Okay.
So was this on social media, or was it just in person? How did the audience receive the information?
This was one of my first We're Back.
Oh, great.
And an in-person situation, carrying boxes of handouts and materials, even though this organization, because it this group, because it works with health care professionals, most of the attendees were people who work daily in healthcare, home health, hospitals,
Okay.
doctors. Those were the types of people who were there, and they were getting their additional continuing education credentials.
Okay.
So that made a difference in terms of what I presented. I had 3 pages of a bibliography
Wow.
available to them, so that
Right.
they would have the chance to see the research that I had done and find out what was going on out in the world in terms of documenting that volunteering is something that's very good for us.
Great. So you did a lot of research prior to your presentation, which is always wonderful. Can you share some tips or highlights from your presentation? Our audience today are volunteers and AARP staff. So the purpose of this program, or all of our podcasts, are to share information with staff and volunteers that maybe they can get more information about, or even duplicate, replicate, however they want to use the information. So what can you share about from your presentation?
Okay, there are a couple of things. And of course, I couldn't get started without a quote. And for a change, although, we talked about in my presentation, we talked about Ethel Percy Andrus
Yes.
and her commitment always as a volunteer. But I thought there were also other things that we could talk about. And one was a statement that Rosalind Carter made.
Okay.
She's, of course, a former First Lady and part of a team that obviously believes in volunteering all the time. And she had said, without volunteers, we'd be a nation without a soul. And I thought that was an important way to get started as we think about, why do people volunteer? What are they going to get out of it? What's the purpose? And what are they providing to their communities by volunteering? I shared some of the information that AARP has researched over time through the Global Council on Brain Health, and talked about the 6 pillars of brain health, and that being engaged socially is very important. And actually, 5 of the 6 pillars of brain health tie to volunteering. They are things that you can do because you're volunteering. You can get physical exercise, you improve your mental state, you can improve your relationships with people. So all of those things were important, I think, to talk about related to what AARP could provide. Also talked about how widespread the notion of volunteering is. It's not just something that we do here in the United States. And in 2019, AARP did some research on volunteering, and that is published information that's available. And they were, as I can say they, were forerunners in terms of thinking about what volunteers are going to be like in the future. Not knowing in 2019 that we would have a couple of years of COVID and a couple of years of being tied down in ways that we'd not expected. So some of the findings from that research I thought were just fascinating, to the point where they thought that if you were going to encourage volunteers, you've got to come at it how they want to be addressed. You've got to come at it how they want to be used. You've got to provide an opportunity for them to use the skills that they have. You've got to address technology and make it possible for them to join or participate with you in ways other than just in person. And those were all things that are put out in AARP's research prior to the pandemic. And here we are finding that this is how we're going to be living. We're doing this virtually, but I've already been to any number of meetings where half of the audience is on Zoom or some other technology, and the other half is in person. One of the other things that came out of the AARP research was that people have a chance to improve their brain and improve their outcomes. And we don't end up, regardless of our age, end up being, our brains are not finished, okay? And I know you know this, and one of the things that I thought it was necessary at this presentation that I was doing to make sure that that point came out, because there was a doctor who was talking for hours about brain health and how important that was, and how important it was for these healthcare professionals to support people who were going, to encourage them to use their best, to do their best, okay?
And the audience being volunteers and staff, this is very good information for them, because when you think about staff needing more volunteers or would like to have more volunteers to work with them, you're giving them tips on how they can approach volunteers, possibly retain volunteers for the long term. Any suggestions about volunteering for those volunteers who are listening, how to get started, how do they focus their desire on a particular area to volunteer? Any thoughts about that?
Oh, yes, of course I have.
I know you do. That's what I want. Your thoughts are important.
No, but it was interesting during this presentation. One of the people in attendance, I allowed people to ask questions as they came up. And one woman wanted to talk about her teenager. And I know that's not usually a focus for us, because we're focusing on the 50 plus, but the intergenerational aspect of it I thought was important. Yes. And this young man had decided he wanted to volunteer and he wanted to help older people.
Excellent.
But he went to a place, and he and his mother had driven and found a place for him to volunteer, and he was going to do this the entire summer. And it was a matter of, he wanted to work with them, to do whatever it was. It's kind of a community center place. And after the first couple of days, he found out that the job that he was going to have most often was going to be making sure that the bathrooms had adequate supplies and some other kinds of things. Not what he thought he was going to be doing, but in part because his mother believed, and he also believed, that volunteering was very important for him. He decided to stay the entire summer. And she asked me, what did I think should be his next step? Because he was very disappointed with what he had encountered there. He didn't feel like his skills had been used. He knew he could do a lot more things. He was willing to do some of the menial tasks. That's fine. He stayed the entire summer and did those because he knew he was helping, but he also knew he had other skills. Yes. And that's one of the things that I think is so important for people to recognize. Most of our volunteers came from situations where they have had to use skills, and they bring more to the office and the need to volunteer than just a hand. Having a hand is a good thing, but being able to use those skills and find out what those skills are and find out what intrigues that person means you're going to get a better response. They're going to feel better. And the research shows that if someone is volunteering and they're only volunteering just 2 hours a week, okay, just 2 hours a week, that increases their sense of happiness. This is a Harvard study, as much as though they were making $100,000 a year.
Yes, yes.
So, you know, you want people to feel good about what they do. So we've got to do more to try to encourage people to use our skills and to speak up when we're not using those. So I suggested to this mother that she use a place like Create the Good, because now this young man knows some of the things he doesn't want to do, but let's find out what he does want to. And there are other opportunities on Create the Good. Not all of them would be with AARP, but that isn't necessary. It's good to have people volunteering. It is something that is better for the community and for the country to have people volunteering at any age.
Right, that's good. That's a good point. And it's most unusual. So that was a plus for that mom to have a son who really wants to volunteer. So when we're thinking about volunteering, you mentioned Create the Good. Do you see that as a place for someone who wants to start volunteering to research first, or just go online and look at all the opportunities? How do you suggest someone get started in becoming a volunteer?
Well, if you have not had a chance to just say, see AARP volunteers in your state or community in action, you know, because that's one way to be able to know that that's what you want to do. I always suggest using Create the Good as a possibility, because you can put in your zip code and find out what's available. And you can find out the things that allow you to volunteer from home as well as in person. And those are very clearly listed. Also, if you're interested in finding volunteers for something that you think is important in your community, Create the Good is also a place to do that. And there are ways to use Create the Good to reach out to other people to create that community of people wanting to do the same thing. There are other places. I say volunteermatch.org is a place that's a possibility. You know, and then if you go to aarp.org/volunteer, you can actually get to the form that allows you to say to AARP, this is what I'm interested in. You got something like that for me.
Great, great, yes.
So, you know, there are a number of ways to do that.
Yes, and that's wonderful, because I know that AARP is always looking for volunteers who want to do a variety. And one thing I love about volunteering with AARP, you can decide what you want to do. And
absolutely.
That's very important. Did you receive any feedback from participants at the conference in reference to your particular presentation?
Well, I did, and I don't know about some people, but I always kind of take it with a grain of salt.
Yes,
I always think that, you know, it's very nice. People, you love it when they come up at the end of a presentation and talk about how that actually told me things that I didn't know. You made me think about better ways to involve my family, involve myself in making the community what it is we want it to be. But then this organization, the Mid-America Institute on Aging and Wellness, MAIA, since they were providing continuing education credits, had to have a formal evaluation available and provided, as well as being able to certify folks. So my presentation was certified. there's, and people had to sign off on that.
Excellent.
My evaluation came back. I finally got it about a week or so ago. And I got 100%,
Wonderful.
which is the most you can do. And that I'm going, oh, that's really great. That's not the reason I do this. I do these kinds of, because I think it's important to get the information out that there are ways to make your retirement and your second careers, your multiple careers more interesting. And so that's why I do these things. So it's gratifying when somebody comes back and says,
well, that tells you that your presentation was well received. We're going to begin to bring closure to this session, but what about fun things? You know, what is, you've had many, I'm sure, rewarding volunteer opportunities, but can you share one of your rewarding, something that comes to the top of your list of volunteer opportunities that continues to stand out in your mind?
I think probably, and you're probably going to think this is a little weird, but everything that I have done, in part because it is so different from anything that I did over the 40 plus years of my finance career. Being able to stand in a park just a couple of weeks ago at an AARP fitness facility installation, you know, for adults, where we then tied brain health to the various pillars of brain health, to getting people to exercise on this. We provided creative arts so that they'd have a chance to be engaged socially. We did all the various pillars in a park on a beautiful summer day, and people were able to come through and talk to each of us and find out that it can be so rewarding, not only to volunteer, but to volunteer with AARP, but to think positively about what we're doing to improve our health, because that is something for us.
Definitely. Wonderful. Sounds wonderful. Now, with the conference MAIA, is it available online, or is this something, I know this is a particular organization, so they don't have the documents online for people to view?
No, in part because so much of the information was privileged and proprietary, that it was not available to people. They did not tape things. For example, just a few sessions were recorded.
Okay, great.
So that is not something that's available. But what I do want to tell you just one, how I started out with the Rosalind Carter quote, and went through in the middle with Dr. Ethel Percy Andrus and to serve, not to be served. I ended up with one that I found from Martin Luther King Jr. And his is, it's a little bit long, but it is, everybody can be great because anybody can serve. You don't have to have a college degree to serve. You don't have to make your subject and your verb agree to serve. You don't have to know the second theory of thermodynamics and physics to serve. You only need a heart full of grace, a soul generated by love.
That is so true, and such a wonderful quote from Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And we're going to end on that note. Deborah Turner, volunteer extraordinaire with AARP, we thank you for coming on today and sharing your experiences, your world-renowned experiences for that matter, with AARP and the benefits of volunteering. Thank you for representing AARP at the Mid-America Institute on Aging and Wellness Conference. It appears that your comments were well received, and I'm sure that they will be in contact with you if that is a forum to go by for you to give additional information. So thank you so much for joining us today. Any final words before I close out?
No, I do want to say thank you to you, Lillian, and the Roost for sharing this information with volunteers. And I hope that people are encouraged and challenged to reach out and to become the change they want to see.
Excellent. Thank you all so much, AARP staff and AARP volunteers, for joining us for this session. This ends our Roost News podcast. Look for more at a different time. Thank you. Bye-bye.